on the corner of Bazette, and he stayed all night there. He slept on the porch, but the horse slept in a stall, and it cost him 10 cents to feed his horse. And I got that picture. I've got it in Ella's journal. And he had a tie on, sharp looking, and all the men on the store, there was about 4 or 5 men standing there on the store, every one of them had a tie on. And he rode that horse he rode that horse from East Texas to north of Corsicana, about 100 miles. And he rode it to go to work for Mr. Porch. But that's where Grandpa McAvaney lived, and Mama. And he worked for Grandpa for a while. And he wasn't, see, he was just a worker. Grandpa McAvaney was pretty wealthy. He had a lot of land. And
he lost during the Depression, didn't
he? He wasn't too happy with Mama marrying Papa. But they got married, and then Papa went to work for Grandpa. And then, I don't know why he moved to Roll Shade. There's several questions. But he bought 10 sections of land down there at Roll Shade, where the church was, and his land went from over to the Quinn place, over to the road, and all the way to the river. And he built the first grocery store in Roll Shade. He built it down there where his Grandma's house was. He built it under the big oak trees. And that was the only store in Roll Shade. And Mom and Papa married in, where's that place? North of Powell. I mean, of course, County. Barry. Barry was out there in Blackland, and he sold out, and he bought that 10 sections down at Roll Shade. And he lost all but 5 sections, but he owned a big, we wouldn't call it a tractor, it was called it was a huge thing. It was steam, kind of a steam engine. And he used it for a while for a meal, some type of meal. Then he built a huge dipping thing to dip cattle with the ticks. So he made a lot of money there. But when the Depression hit, and Mama and Papa lived over, I wasn't born there, but all the other kids was born at this house on Grandpa's place. And they had a tornado, and they picked this house up and just set it off over the side of the blocks. And all Papa had to do was jack it up, set it back on the block. And I asked him, why didn't you have a storm cellar? Like everybody else almost had a storm cellar. But he didn't have a storm cellar. He said, I don't need a storm cellar. And he said, if God's gonna do it, he's gonna harm us wherever we're at. So he didn't believe in a storm cellar. Everybody else had them.
Yeah.
Then, but he never did blow away again. Never did have a tornado again. And they were all born over there, and I was born at where he moved on Mr. Ware's place. he left working from Grandpa, and there was another rich family called the Wares. And Tom Papa knew the old man Ware, and he took that land, thirds and fourth. Okay, he worked all those years, worked that land for the Ware family on thirds and fourth, and the old man Ware died, and his son took over, and he was a friend of Mom and Papa's, and he'd come down. They lived at Mineral Wells, and he would come down every cotton picking season and pick up all of his corn that he had and his cotton he got. I said, I'll never work that hard unless I own it all.
There you go.
But Papa didn't. Mama tried to get him to buy land. He didn't. He just didn't care about it. He was afraid to go in debt. He never went in debt for hardly anything. He'd pay cash or we would do without. The electricity come in. I don't remember, but we had Latin lamps we lived by.
Right.
And he said we're not going to. And the electric line come right across the farm, right down to Trinidad. And it cost $5 to hook up the light line to the electric line. Papa said, I'm not paying no $5 to hook that line up. We don't need electricity. He said, we got these Latin lamps and kerosene lamps, and we don't need any electric. What do we need electricity? And everybody sat around the table, including Lazy and all of us. Well, why not? Well, we don't need it. It costs $5. Then you're going to have to pay a monthly bill. Well, you got to buy kerosene lamps. And we would have not had electric lights on it. Mama said, yes, we are.
Yeah, you told us that in your letter.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, Big Mama put her foot down, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. And then we got a freezer. We had a ice box. You put your ice.
It was really an ice box, right?
Yeah, it was about,
Ice on top.
about 10, 15 pounds of ice a week. And it would fill the ice box up, but you'd take about 10 pounds and put in the cottonseed hulls. We always had a lot of cottonseed hulls fed to the cattle.
Oh, uses insulation?
And you could put ice and cover it with cottonseed hulls, never melt.
Huh.
Last a whole week or two, now it melted.
Huh.
Then when your refrigerator got down, you go out and get your ice out of the cottonseeds and put in the ice box.
Wow.
Our boys, we still call them, because Mom and Daddy called them ice box, go get out of the ice box, we'll call it an ice box. And my boys go, Mom, it's not an ice box.
It's just some things that you do.
It was.
I know, it never was an ice box for me either, but that's what Mom and Dad called it.
The ice box was named Lenoard Ice Box.
Oh, yeah.
But they spelled it Leonard.
Yeah.
Mama spelled my name Lenoard. Everybody in the world, and if you Google my name, they'll tell you that there's only one person that spells their name Leonard, and it's Lenoard Trent in Abilene, Texas.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I Googled it.
Yeah. When we were in England and I worked underground, you didn't go out during the day because it was a steep hill to climb to the complex. And so I'd give my letters home to the colonel, and he did that for a while, and he come back one day and he says, Daddy, how do you spell your husband's name? Because you had to put the full name on the return. And I said Lenoard. He said, oh, okay. He said, I just thought you were spelling Leonard wrong. And I said, no, that's the way his mother spelled it, and that's the way he says it's to be spelled. And you won't believe how many times we had to amend his military orders because they spelled his name Leo. So you'd have an amendment changing it to Len. Which was another thing. I had one of the colonels in our division. His name was, gosh, oh, it wasn't just, things just leave me. But anyway, it was, mostly you spelled it with 2 L's. And he only spelled his with 1. And I sometimes would type up his orders and I would put 2 L's in there. Because, you know, it was Russell or something like that. What's that colonel's name? Lived down, worked in the hole with me. But anyway, it was really funny, just think little things like that you remember that you did, and you just, you know, caused a lot of confusion at times.
Well, you know, Big Mama spelled Isabel, you know, that ISI, and nobody else spells it like that either. So, I mean, I spell my name all the time, and people ask me why I spell it that way. It's like, well, that's because that's how my grandmother spelled it.
She got this name from, there was a Stamps quartet in Dallas for years. It sung every day at noon. And they sung gospel songs. We always listened to it after we got a radio. And one of the singers was named Lenoard Gordon. And she claimed his name was spelled Lenoard. So that's the way she spelled my name. I'm named after a guy, but named Lenoard Gordon.
Well, she came up with some strange names for you guys. I tell you what,
I know
Urshel
somebody asked me,
Ray,
you know,
Donna
Alma
May,
Rochelle.
and Alma
I was
Rochelle.
almost a junior.
Yeah, you were.
Almost a junior. Thank God Mom renamed me. I wasn't a junior.
I don't know where I don't know how she came up with Palma. I don't think I've ever heard that. from
I've
you.
never heard
Urshel Ray.
Urshel.
Urshel Ray.
So yeah, I don't know where she came up with some of her names, and how in the world she stuck with Alma Rochelle when it came out of why she didn't change his name.
Well, I tell you, my mother was pretty smart. She went to high school
Yeah.
because when Papa went to school, they only had the 8th grade. See, he only went to the 8th grade, but Mama was well educated. The McAvaney's, of course, he had money at the time, but when, I'll finish on his story, what happened to him, the flu epidemic come along in the 31?
It was a big one in 1918. There was a really bad flu epidemic.
Okay, she lost 3 brothers that year. Grandpa McAvaney lost 3 boys that year.
Big Mama lost 3 brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 1918. If you go down the Alligator Cemetery where Mom and them are buried,
Yeah.
you go through there and look, and you see all these tombstones with
Yeah, it took
1918
millions. Americans died during that thing.
flu epidemic.
I lost 3 uncles out of the McAvaney's. But then, if you want me to continue, he moved over there and worked that farm all of those years. And the first one to leave, in fact, he apologized to me years later, and I'll tell you what. H.T., well, Bubba got married, and he gave Bubba a team of mules. The wedding presents in those days for a man, if his dad and mother, was normally a team of mules, because that was the most valuable gift you could get.
That you needed for the farm, yeah.
Yeah, and he gave Bubba a horse and a mule, and he gave H.T. a saddle horse, which I always resented, but that was a beautiful animal, and he could travel 45 miles behind the car in Singlefoot. He had 5 gates.
King was his name, King?
King was his name.
How about that?
Big
Didn't know that.
sorrel horse. And everybody loved to ride him because he just like riding in a rocking chair. Well, then he gave him that horse to Ray because Ray and Thelma had a baby before marriage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And Papa wouldn't take him. Papa kicked him out.
Was that Doyle or,
No, he wouldn't.
no, what baby was that?
Doyle?
Was it Doyle?
Doyle.
Doyle, okay.
Yeah, Doyle was before marriage.
Oh, okay.
And they had to get married. And Mr. Shipley took him in. But Papa kicked Ray out.
Oh, wow.
And
And this was before the war, right?
yeah, this is all before the war. And he and Thelma lived with Mr. Shipley over on another farm. And then all of them belonged to the National Guard. Ray, Lazy, Bubba. Because the Texas National Guard paid $12.50 a month. And they had to go drill every Wednesday night, train. Well, that was a big, man, that was a big income,
Yeah.
12 and a half a month. In fact, Lazy made 12 and a half on active duty when he was in the cavalry. And he sent Mama $5 a month. He kept the rest. And that $5 went to buy food. And that's what a good guy Lazy was.
Sports you kids back still at home, huh?
Yeah, he sent her $5. And we all we had flour and coffee and things with that $5.
He also went to the CCC camps too, didn't he?
Huh?
Daddy also went to those
Yeah,
CCC
Daddy.
camps.
Well, the 3 C's was before the cavalry.
Okay.
Roosevelt organized the 3 C's, which really helped the country. They built roads, bridges, buildings, and everything, and they drew
Possum Kingdom Lake.
Yeah.
about $10 or something a month.
So was Daddy the only one of the boys that went and did that?
Yeah, he's the only one who went to the 3 C's. He's the only one went to the cavalry. H.T. got married, Bubba got married, then H.T. got married. I got to tell you this. We were plowing. I was running up and down with all of them. They all picked on me, but
Brother.
Bubba and Lazy and H.T. and Papa was all plowing. They had 5 teams to work the farm. There were
Wow.
about 1,000 acres in.
5 teams, huh?
And each one, Bubba had 100. He had cotton land, and H.T. had cotton land, and Lazy had some cotton land, all under Papa's name, but they got so much, I didn't get crap but work. But anyway, the war come along, and of course, being in the National Guard, they were first to go
Yeah.
all over the country, not only in Kearns, but everywhere. And they went to war first. And that left me and Evelyn. Evelyn was born,
Evelyn was born while Daddy was gone, either
yeah,
in
she
the
was born
or-
Lazy had already, they were all
He
gone.
didn't
but
know.
then-
He didn't know Big Mama was pregnant. I think. Was the,
No, she wasn't supposed to be. In fact, she didn't expect to have me.
Yeah.
I was a surprise too. But we were plowing for the war. and I wasn't going for all of them. And here comes this big, spacey Pontiac car, you know, down the runway, down the third row. And it's Mr. Struby, a rich man out of Corsicana, the horse racing business. And he drove up, and Papa was the first one out. And Papa got off to see who it was, and he told him Mr. Truby told him who it was, and he says, "Do you have a son named Hubert?" He said, "Yeah." He's right coming back on this elevator. I want to talk to him. Well, why do you want to talk to him? He says, "Well, I want to hire him to ride horses." He says, "I understand he's a little bitty fella." He said, "Yeah, he's smaller than me, really." And here comes HT on the elevator. And he says, "You can talk to him." And he got off, and Mr. Struby went over. Papa introduced him. He says, "Son," he says, "I'm looking for somebody that can ride a horse." And he said, "Can you ride a horse?" HT is cocky little crap. He says, "Man," he says, "I can ride anything with 4 legs." to Mr. Struby, a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know, and Struby was rich. He had a lot of them. And Struby says, "Well, would you be interested in coming to work for me?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I work with my dad." He says, "Well, I'm looking for someone to train to be a jockey for me." He said, "Well, how much do you pay?" He said, $500 a week.
Oh,
Everybody's, "Oh."
Well, HT, I guess you ride horses.
yeah, when can you start?
HT says, "What?" He said, "You mean you gonna pay?"
Keep telling. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
He said, "You mean you gonna pay me $500 to ride a horse?"
Wow, I mean, that was a lot of money back then.
Oh, that's like $1 million
Oh,
to the
goodness,
Trents.
I didn't know that.
Lord, you ever heard of 500 a week? That's 500 a year,
Yeah.
if you were lucky.
Wow. And did he really pay him $500 a week?
Yeah.
My goodness.
But they were rich.
Yeah.
See, in those days, the horse racing business was nothing but the rich. Movie stars. So,
So that's how he got to start riding horses.
yeah, HT said, "Well, if it's all right with my dad," and my dad says, "If you can make $500 a week, son, you go ride that horse." And how much we knew about it, see. So they moved to Powell. And the Struby Ranch was out north of Powell. And he had about 20 horses, racehorses. He raced them all over the country, up to New York. California had 3 racetracks. New York, so
Did he race at Arlington Downs there?
Arlington Downs was open.
Yeah.
So Bubba went to work then. He and JB worked for a while for Struby, then they went to work for Arlington Downs. And I'm still on the farm growing up. So when HT got $500 a week, that's like a rich man.
Yeah.
And he and Blackie moved in that house in Powell, right on the road.
You actually was paying him $500 a week?
Whoa! W.C. Struby.
W.C. Street.
And HT was a natural. He put him on that, a guy by Mickey Harrison was the trainer. And the Strubys were training about 20 horses. And he put Mickey Harrison put HT on that horse, their legs doubled up. He was a natural, just like that. And they trained Struby's horses, and Struby made a contract with him, And that's where he made a mistake. He made a contract for 5 years. And he was to ride all the Struby horses and he could ride another horse if Struby didn't have a horse in that race. But he was very successful. In fact, he started making big money. And he rode all years. He wrote, they had a horse, I think Sandy's got a picture of it. And he rode that horse and won the 2 big races. And he was to ride the horse at the Kentucky Derby, the only chance he ever got, because you had to win all 2 races. You had to win the 2 races, and then if you qualified for the Kentucky, if your horse did. Well, his horse got lame and he didn't get to ride in the Kentucky Derby, but he won the other 2 big races, and that made him 5th rider in the United States.
Didn't he help train a horse though that won the Kentucky Derby, Tommy Lee?
Yeah, that's the horse.
Oh, that's, yeah, because I remember reading that, Tommy Lee.
Yeah, he
Lee.
won the 2 horses, two major races before the Kentucky.
Yeah.
You had to win those 2 to ride the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah,
That was in 1959,
So
I think.
yeah.
That HT then and Blackie moved all over the world, and then the 2 boys come and live with Mama,
Yeah,
Eddie and Jury, and she sent them to school and everything.
and that one of those boys that started calling her Big Mama? Or was that one of the
everybody
race?
called
Yeah.
her
Or
Big
was it
Mama.
I think it's
Percy?
Percy, one of the, that was living with
I don't know which one started that.
I know Daddy said he saw a paper when he was overseas in the war that said pay the rent with Trent.
Pay the rent with Hubert Trent.
Yeah, that was
Newspaper
all over the
clipping.
country. They'd say holler that. I went to quite a few of his races in California, but that was the main thing they would call him. He was well known jockey. And the Little Rascal, I was out there with him, and you've heard of Bud Abbott and Lou Costello?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the level that owned all the racetracks,
Yeah.
race horses in. And he had ridden a couple of Bud Abbott Costello's horses. He hadn't got paid. So I'm with him that morning. I was visiting out there, and I could have got me a job at the betting windows. He could, and I didn't take it. I wanted to get back. I was pretty much like this girl I was dating back in Kearns, and I come home, which I should have stayed out there. I had a good job. And anyway, we were walking, we went to the track early that morning because he had to ride a couple horses before the race. And when we met Costello, the little fat guy, Bud Abbott. And he was coming with 2 guys looked like gangsters in black suits and everything. And we met him, and HT stopped, said, "Hey, Costello, you owe me for 2 horses. By God, I want my money." And I thought, oh.
Little old bitty thing?
Little rascal. You hear 2 guys look like gangsters in big black suits. And he said, he pointed his finger on Costello and he said, "By God, you owe me for 2 horses. I want paid." He said, "Okay, Trent, you get paid." He said, "If I don't, next time I see you, I'm gonna whoop your ass."
You probably would have gave it a try too.
He was a cocky little dude.
Yeah,
And
Daddy
he
always
was a
said.
good friend to Betty Grable. He rode a lot of Betty Grable's horses. Oh, she was beautiful. And I was going to Thailand, And anyway, I had stopped by in uniform. I go back to the Trent strictly. And me and Blackie, their compartments sat side by side in the VIP spots, you know. And Blackie and I, we started drinking martinis. And Betty Grable was sitting right next. Oh, a beautiful woman. And they were good friends, see.
What
And-
year was this? What time frame?
Huh?
What time frame?
Was this after the war?
This was after the war. I got back to war a little bit. This was about 1952, I think.
Okay.
I went to Thailand as an advisor to the Thai Air Force, and that was good duty. But I was staying a few days with them, and going to the races. And I'll tell you about going down to Mexico. But anyway, Betty Grable and I and Blackie, we were getting a little bit loaded on the martinis. And I told Betty Grable, I said, and I'm in uniform. You had to wear a uniform in those days. You couldn't wear civilian clothes. And I said, you know, your picture is all over the world in barracks. And you got the most beautiful legs, anybody. I said, will you show them to me? She says, you Trent, you just like your brother. I said, you mean he's asked to see your legs? No. And Blackie just died laughing, see. Well, I'll tell you another story before I get off her. The real close friend of HT was another jock named I met Johnny London too, who was a famous jockey. Eddie R. Carroll.
Oh, yeah. I know.
He was a famous jockey.
Yeah.
Okay. His lot joined HD's lot at their house. And you walk through back there through a gate, you in his Eddie R. Carroll's lot. Well, he liked me. He says, did that stingy brother give you any money to bet with today? I said, no. He says, here's 500. I said, I don't want your money. Take this 500. If your brother's too stingy, I'm not. But he gave me 500 bucks
Wow.
to play with. But anyway, he had this clubhouse built there. I mean, and the bar in the clubhouse was 30,000. And they gambled there all the time. The jockeys did. I mean, big money.
Wow.
Well, right over the bar, he had the big picture of Marilyn Monroe with her dress flowing down.
Yeah.
Well, one night party there, we were all there. I was with and old Betty Grable and Harry James walks in. And Betty Grable told Eddie, said, you take that damn picture down from there and you put my picture up. Well, HT and Harry James played shuffleboard at this turf club where all the jockeys ended up. So we went to the turf club. I wanted to pick up the tips, you know, tips loaded, more money on the table when we leave. But anyway, HT was sitting here, and Black was sitting here, and I was sitting next to Blackie. We were sitting on a bar stool, having a drink, and along come this guy, and his elbow hit HT right on the head. And HT couldn't stand nobody to touch his head. And he jumped off of that stool and says, you son of a bitch, don't you ever hit my head. This big guy turned around and Steve was about like this. This guy said, but like I said, God, I hope he don't jump on that guy. I said, he'll wipe the floor out of both of us. I said, I'll have to try to help him.
He's going to help, huh?
The guy says, well, I'm sorry, Jock, I'm sorry. He says, well, you come back by, don't you hit me in the head. Yes, sir. I'll tell you, he was something else.
Well, I know he and Daddy fought all the time when they were growing up, because they was only about a year apart, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
They fought all the time.
They fought. Well, H.D., so, and I'll get back on the Trent story. But H.D. says, baby brother, you want to make some money? I said, sure, I want to make some money. He said, I'll tell you, before you leave, we'll go down Saturday to the races down in Mexico. Says, Johnny London is riding down there. Well, I had been in, he took me up to meet Johnny London. He's a little old bitty fella, but he was a leading jock in the United States. Rode more races than anybody. And we went in his mansion there on the same street H.D. and him lived on. And went in, I had never seen one of them black birds. And as we walked in, somebody was saying, you want a drink? You want a drink? He looked around, H.D. just laughing. He says, that's that bird there asking. I said, I've never seen a talking bird before. That bird was just plain as everything. You want a drink? You want a drink?
Probably a minor bird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably mine a bird.
We went to Mexico. And he says, now, there's 5 races that I've got tips on. So we'll bet on those 5 races, then we'll bet on every Johnny London race. Okay. So we hit 5 races. They pay off in silver dollars. I had this sleeve tightened up that up full of silver dollars, this sleeve full of silver dollars. And
Wow.
it bet on Johnny London in the last race. So we bet heavy on Johnny because we knew he was going to win. And his dead gum horse went lame on him.
Oh, no.
And we lost our biggest bet on the last race. Okay, so there I went on to Thailand. From there I went to
I remember
Thailand.
when y'all came back from Thailand.
I come back 1955,
54.
54.
Yeah, 54.
And I asked for, my rank could get 3 choices of assignment. Each, I had the same privilege. We got, as a chief, we got, when we wanted to reassign, we had 3 choices of bases. I wanted to go to Randolph, and they said, no, it's filled, there's no vacancy. So they gave me a choice of Upper New York, at some little old base up there. Man, you send me up there with them Yankees, I don't want to go up there.
You probably didn't either, did you?
They
I
said,
was there.
well,
Oh, you what?
said, we could send you to Laredo,
Oh boy.
and then you can move to Randolph. But this was Randolph, and then, when did I go to Lake Charles?
In 1954.
Yeah, 54. They said, if you go to Lake Charles, we'll move you up to 2nd Air Force within a year or 2. So I went to Lake Charles Air Force Base and met this beautiful lady.
Oh, that's where y'all met, huh?
And I met, and she was working for the Red Cross. And the girl that was working with her,
Oh, my boss.
her husband worked for me. And he told me, and I had bought that Super 88Os when I come back, see? So, he says, hey, I've got this girl working for my wife, with my wife, you are me. I said, man, I got 3 girlfriends already. I don't need a girlfriend. He says, yeah, but not like this one. He says, she ain't gonna honky tonk with you, and probably ain't gonna shack with you. I said, well, leave that up to me. He said, well, come up Saturday morning, she'll be up to the house. And this is a true story. So I go up Saturday morning, and first of all, they told her that I was coming. She says, I don't want to meet no master sergeant. Says, they're all too old and big fat beer bellies. And they said, well, this one is old, all right, but he don't have a beer belly, but he's got a brand new Oldsmobile. She agreed, said, okay. So
Has Sandy heard this story?
Huh?
Has Sandy heard this story?
I think so.
So I don't know. But I went up there and Dottie was sweeping out her Plymouth. She had a Plymouth. And she was sweeping out, naturally cleaning her floorboard. And she had shorts on. And I saw her
Them
legs.
legs. Betty Grable legs.
Yeah. And I said, I gotta have me some of that somewhere or other.
You're gonna make her blush.
So we dated, blind date that night with the other couple. And there's about 30 miles from Lake Charles to the border of Texas. In those days, you were out of remember, that's a long time ago. We've been married 61 years. So it's 60 years or something ago.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't know, we dated, we were going over to Orange, Texas to a fish place to eat catfish, famous place over in Orange. And they were in the back and Dottie was up front with me. And that was before the air conditioning in cars. So I had to crack the windows around so we get a little air. And I hit that flat dirt and I was running around 80 miles. That was fast in those days. I was running around 80, 85 and Brader sat in the back, he reached over and said, boss, you're driving a little fast. I looked down, I'm running 80. I said, oh. I wasn't showing off. I was just, that new car, that Super 88,
It could go.
fast. Yeah, it would go. And Dottie sat in the front, she didn't say anything. So we drove into the next, I looked into my rear view and I see red lights. And this blind date. And I said, I ain't gonna let him catch me. So I'm in uniform. And we get in this next town and here comes this big old sheriff, hat on and everything, stopped us. Boy, do you know how fast you're going? No, sir. He said, you were going to 80, 90, or 100 miles an hour because the only way I caught you is I'm driving the new Super 88. Oh, yes, sir. He said, I'm going to take you around here to the Justice of Peace. And she was a woman. And I said, oh, I can handle that. You know. So I went in with the sheriff stood back. Raider went in with me. With this uniform on, the ribbons on, and everything. She said, son, I can charge you $200 or you can wait and see the judge tomorrow. And I said, or court. I said, ma'am, I'm in the Air Force, and I just come back from overseas, I don't make much money, and I didn't notice I was going so fast. I got a brand new car, and I've been gone for 2 or 3 years, and I got through talking. She said, son, would $20 be too much? I said, no, ma'am. I'm reaching for that $20. The old Brader shaking his head. So we go out, that big old sheriff says, I tell you what, boy. He says, I've never seen that woman take $20 for a $200 fine. And he says, when you come back through my town, you better be driving the speed limit because I'll be watching for you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we got out and went on our way. And she and I dated solid for...
That was in about August and we married in January.
Wow.
We dated solid. I lost all those other girls.
All the other girls went away after that. Huh?
I was supposed to meet a rich girl in Sun Valley, Idaho. that I had been on a ship, the Queen Elizabeth I rode coming back home from London. I rode ship from Singapore all around Egypt. I went to Cairo, all around. Took me about 35, 40 days on that trip, all paid for by the Thailand government.
Oh, wow.
First class.
Wow.
And the Queen Elizabeth was a huge
Oh, I
ship.
bet that was nice.
It had 3 nightclubs going 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And I gave this waiter $50 to seat me with a single girl. And he seated me with a mother and daughter. And this is first class on the Queen Elizabeth, nothing but rich. And the only reason the Thailand government was paying my way. And he seated me, when you sit, you had to sit with the same people the whole trip. He seated me with a woman and her daughter, who her husband had died, and they had taken this trip to get over the hurt, and they owned a big ranch in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And of course, the mother asked me what I did for a living, because I'm traveling on a diplomatic passport, plus tailor-made clothes. I said, well, I'm from Texas. Are you in the cattle business? Yes, ma'am. Are you in the oil business? Yes, ma'am. I told that lie. And me and that girl kind of liked each other when we got to New York. She invited me to meet her in Sun Valley, Idaho. Well, on a sergeant's pay, you ain't gonna make it to Sun Valley, Idaho.
But you were gonna have to fess up and tell them you weren't no cattle baron, weren't you?
Oh, I didn't. I couldn't lie. I couldn't straighten the lie up because her mother wouldn't have let her, and I had intended to make a way to go. But her mother I knew wouldn't accept that lie.
So you got out of that by meeting
I
this
met
little
her.
lady here.
They probably need to go.
Well, I appreciate all the
Yeah,
the
I'd like to
stories.
tell you the rest of the Trent story sometimes before I go.
Well,
I got a lot of things. Well, we'll
Well-
see. We'll see.
well, I think we got time. Tell me another story.
Oh, well, we'll go back. She and I got married at Rockwall, Texas. You probably didn't know that.
Yes, it's in your letter.
Oh, is it in your
Well,
letter?
you know, after we was going together, he took me home to meet Mom and Papa
Where was your parents? Where'd
in
you go?
Iowa.
In Iowa.
My parents, I was from Iowa.
Why'd you get married in Rockwall?
Well, the story behind that was when we went to,
Cost me $11.
well, let me tell you now, okay, there was, we went home to meet Mom and Papa. And you know, it's like, you know Mama, the minute you open the door, it's like you've known her your whole life. She hugged me and everything, and I really felt at home. I really just felt like I was part of her family. And so that day, she said, I gotta go to town and shop. And Leonard says, you go with her. I'm not, because she talks all the time. Well, we were there the whole afternoon with her talking from store to store. But anyway, we went home and started going together. Well, then we came back and we decided we was going to get married. Well, we went, Mama went with us. We went to Dallas to look at trailers because in Lake Charles there wasn't much place really infested with cockroaches and stuff. So we went to Dallas to look at trailers, and we ordered one, and I got to pick out the colors and all this and that. They were to deliver it in April. Now this was about probably November. They were delivered in April. And so one day I'm sitting in the office and the phone rings and it's the air police. And I thought, oh gosh. They said, do you know a Lenoard Trent? I said, yes. She said, come on, get on.
Come on.
Well, we've got a trailer out here at the front gate and don't know what to do with it. I thought, my Lord. So anyway, so I got a hold of him and he went to the gate and we didn't know what to do with the trailer, you know.
And set the
And
lot
I was
up
living
yet?
in a boarding house, you know. So, found a place to put it and put it out. And, so, you know, like anything, well, we can't pay rent on that trailer lot and I'm paying rent at the boarding house. So Len says, well, you just go live in the trailer. Well, back in those days, you didn't do that, you know. So, he says, well, we'll just have to get married and live in the trailer. And that's what happened.
Oh.
Because you didn't do that, you know, and here I am working for the Red Cross and on base and whatnot, and you just didn't do it. So we had the trailer, and so we got married, went back, lived in the trailer, and then about a year later, we moved to Bossier City, Louisiana. And from there, I went to work for the Civil Service. Then we went to England, was there 4 years, came back, went to Vandenberg Air Force Base, from Vandenberg back to Louisiana, and Louisiana to Hawaii when Sandy was born. Then we came back again to Barksdale, and that was him. Then he retired from, well, then we moved to San Antonio, you know, there. And Randolph retired from there, and then we moved to Abilene, which I didn't want to do. We did. Out there with Sandy. That's just kind of it in a nutshell, you know?
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing the stories with me.
Well, there's some funny stories in there too after we married. I'll believe you me. Well, we met these friends, Gene and Andy Anderson. They were, and I still talk to Gene 2 or 3 times a week. And Andy's passed away, but they didn't have any children when we didn't have it, and we really buddied up and we were really close. And we did some really fun things together and some funny things together. And it was just really a good life. It was. But like I said, with Gene and Andy, they just made our lives very happy because they enjoyed doing what we did and whatnot. And we had this bit, we paid for ours, they paid for theirs, and we had no problems. And we each had a little bitty car. They bought a little Sprite, and we had an MG. We get in those sports cars and go someplace and shop for
Sprite.
tea and biscuits.
MG Sprite.
Yeah, that little bitty car that, I don't know who put that car out, but it was called, I forget what, but we named it the Sprite because it was so little. And Andy he was so big he could hardly get in it. But when you said something about coming to Hawaii and a little car, now I had a Volkswagen when we was in San Antonio, but I did have that later. But we had a little Morris Minor in England as a second car, and it didn't have much power. And Andy was so big that if we were going to go up one of the hills over there, Andy had to get out and run and meet us at the top of the hill because the car wouldn't take all 4 of us. But when we'd go to church or chapel on the base, there was a back road we could take, but there was one place that we couldn't make it up, but we could go up it in reverse.
Wow.
Just fun things like that all through your life, you know.
Yeah.
Tell him about you getting pregnant in
Well,
Hawaii.
when I went to Hawaii, of course, you know, I never dreamed, and that was the first place that when transfer with civil service, that I was allotted per diem because Hawaii had become a state, and everybody, the engineers and everybody, so they got per diem, and so I was classified as a civilian, so I got per diem, and I was getting a big salary. Well, then I got sick, and one of Leonard's guys, his wife was a nurse, and she said, well, you need to go to the doctor. And I said, oh, I'm all right, but I really got sick. And I went, and Lord, she did a test, and I was pregnant. And I just couldn't believe it, you know, because it'd been almost, 13 years. So anyway, when I went home and told Leonard, he was really upset. He put his socks in the commode. And
What in the commode?
yeah, his socks, he was taking off his socks, and he just put them in the commode. I said, Leonard. And that was how.
You know what else I said? I said, I don't want any kid.
He said, I can't do that. And I said, but it
But you're glad you did.
Yeah, worked out.
She started crying.
We,
Well, I told the doctor you didn't want to get.
and anyway, she was a jewel. But I was that time over there, I really didn't get to enjoy the island because I was sick most of the time. I really was. And so when we come back, we went to stopped off in California to see our friends that had been with us in England and been with us at Denver. We stopped. They didn't know about Sandy. So we stopped there, and then we got in the car to drive to Texas. Then I flew to Iowa to show for all my relatives and things to meet Sandy. My parents had flown over to Hawaii to see Sandy when she was just a few months old. So you know the rest.
I got to tell you, one thing that I really respect Papa. You know, he was a man, but he worked hard. I mean hard. That man lived to be 99 years old and went to the doctor very few times.
Tough old bird he was.
Yeah. And he, I wanted to build him, and Dottie agreed. I wanted to build him and Mama a new home there in Kearns. You know what he told me? He said, son, we don't need a new home. We got everything we need. He said, I got $10,000 in the bank to pay each kid $1,000 when I die. He said, if you built us a new home, I'd probably have to lock the front door. Now, to me, there's not many people. Now, he was a happy man. See, he had everything. He had a lot more than I did because I always wanted more.
Yeah.
But he was completely satisfied.
With what he had.
Yeah.
That's why he lived to be 99 years old. He was a great man.
Yeah.
Think about worried about feeding 7 kids on $5 a month. And it never hit us. Good mother and dad, plenty to eat. We had plenty to eat.
We used to love to go home, from Lake Charles over there for the weekend, and then when we were in San Antonio. But I always told her, I said, oh, Linda, the only thing I don't like to go for is Papa didn't want you to use much water to take a bath.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Remember that?
Yeah, and he'd go. Sometimes
You don't want to waste the
I
water.
didn't want to waste the water. And so I always tried to wait till when he wasn't around so I could put more water in the tub so I could take a bath. But when he took a bath, he put just about this much water in the tub, and it would be coal black.
I was in there brushing my teeth or something one morning, and he got on to me because what I needed to do was put the stopper in the sink there and just run a little bit of water. Don't just let that water run now.
Yeah, he
What about that much water in the tub?
And then he would leave it for Mama to clean up, and I went in there and I thought, what in the world happened? And he'd had a bath, but it was just because he'd probably been out in the garden working and whatnot, come in and have that little bit of water in the tub.
We'll have to,
Well,
we'll have to come back out here again.
Y'all better go.
Yeah, we'll try to plan another trip to come back out here again, and we'll pick up Lomas. And
All right. We don't want y'all after dark in that airplane.
talking about Big Mama, when I was born, do you remember the story about my birth?
No.
When Mom had a hard time, she was in labor for like 27 hours, and when the doctors finally got to Mom, I was a forceps baby. They had to pull me out.
that's what's
And they laid me aside and said I was dead. And Big Mama picked me up, and Big Mama's the reason I'm here.
I think we've talked about that.
She delivered over 39 babies.
I heard it was 82.
No, she told me. She
How many?
36. She said actually birth. Now she might have,
Assisted.
helped some along and whatnot, but she said she actually did.
Everybody loved her, and I had, when I went back to a reunion after the war, I had three people come and tell me that they wouldn't be Christians if my mother hadn't taught them.
She was a sweet lady.
All right,
Yeah, but
very
you know,
good.
well, like when your mother, it would be